I just watched a Capricorn walk away from someone who was absolutely perfect for them. And the wildest part? They did it with zero emotion on their face. Like they were closing a failed business deal instead of ending a relationship with someone who loved them. And that's when I realized something nobody wants to say out loud about Capricorns in love. They're terrifying. Not in the obvious way. Not in the dramatic, explosive, throw your stuff out the window way. But in a cold, calculated, absolutely controlled way that makes you question if they ever actually felt anything at all. And if you've ever been in love with a Capricorn, or if you are one, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's this side of them that they will never, ever show you until it's too late. Because here's what nobody tells you about Capricorns in relationships. Everything you think you know about them, that ambitious, hardworking, responsible person who seems so stable and reliable, that's the front. That's the version they've carefully constructed for public consumption. But underneath that, there's something else entirely. Something darker. Something they're desperately trying to control. And the moment you get close enough to see it, everything changes. So let me tell you what actually happens when you fall in love with a Capricorn. Not the romantic fantasy version, not the compatibility chart nonsense, the real raw truth that they're praying you never figure out. First, let's talk about how they pull you in. Because Capricorns are masters at this game, even though they never admit they're playing one. When a Capricorn is interested in you, they don't come on strong. They don't overwhelm you with attention or love bomb you or make grand romantic gestures. That's not their style. Instead, they position themselves. They become useful. They become reliable. They show up when they say they will. They remember details. They solve problems. They make your life easier in small, specific ways. And at first, it feels refreshing, especially if you're coming out of something chaotic or dramatic. Here's this person who's calm, who's got their life together, who doesn't play games. They're straightforward. They're practical. They're safe. But here's what you don't realize in those early days. You're being evaluated. Every single interaction is a test you don't know you're taking. They're watching how you handle responsibility, how you manage money, how you treat service workers, how you talk about your ambitions, whether you're punctual, whether you keep your word. They're building a profile on you, determining if you meet their standards. And the really messed up part, you're falling in love with them while they're still deciding if you're worth the investment. Because that's how Capricorns see relationships, as investments. They won't say it like that. They'll talk about partnership and building something together and long-term compatibility. But underneath all those nice words, there's a spreadsheet. And you're either an asset or a liability. Now, if you pass their initial evaluation, if you meet their criteria, they'll commit. And when a Capricorn commits, it looks solid. They're loyal. They're dependable. They're in it for the long haul. They'll introduce you to their family, include you in their plans, build a life with you. And you'll think you've won the lottery. You've got someone stable, someone serious, someone who won't waste your time. But then you start noticing things, small things at first, like how they never actually tell you what they're feeling. They'll tell you what they're thinking, they'll analyze the relationship, discuss what's working and what isn't, propose solutions to problems. But feelings, emotions, vulnerability, that's locked away somewhere you'll never reach. You'll try to have deep emotional conversations and they'll respond with logic. You'll try to connect on a feeling level and they'll redirect to practical matters. You'll be crying about something that hurt you and they'll be suggesting action steps to fix it. And you'll feel crazy because technically they're being supportive, but emotionally you're starving. Or how they keep score. They'll never say they're keeping score, but they are. Every favor, every compromise, every time they showed up for you and you didn't reciprocate in exactly the way they expected, they're tracking it all. And one day, months, or even years later, they'll bring up something you barely remember and you'll realize they've been cataloging your failures this entire time. Or how they weaponize their self-control. Capricorns pride themselves on being controlled, disciplined, and restrained, which sounds like a virtue until you're in a fight and they're sitting there completely calm while you're emotionally activated, and suddenly you're the crazy one. They don't have to raise their voice or insult you, they just have to look at you with that cold, detached expression that says, "Look how irrational you're being." And you'll feel like you're losing your mind. Because that's their superpower. They can make you feel like your emotions are the problem, like you're too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. And meanwhile, they're over there being reasonable and mature, which really means emotionally unavailable and disconnected. But the really dark stuff? That doesn't show up until you try to leave, or until they decide you're no longer meeting their standards. Let me paint a picture of what happens when a Capricorn decides a relationship is over. There's no emotional breakdown, no begging you to stay, no fighting for the relationship. They don't get angry or sad or desperate. They just close the door. It's like a switch flips and suddenly you're a stranger. All that history you built together, all those intimate moments, all the plans you made, gone. They compartmentalize it, file it away, and move on with surgical precision. And the coldness of it will mess with your head more than any dramatic breakup ever could. Because at least with dramatic breakups, you know the person felt something. But with a Capricorn, you'll spend months or years wondering if they ever actually loved you at all, if any of it was real, or if you were just a line item in their life plan that didn't work out. They'll block you on everything, delete photos, remove all evidence you ever existed. Not out of pain, but out of efficiency. You're no longer relevant to their goals, so why keep reminders around? It's business. Nothing personal. Except it is personal. It's deeply personal to you. But to them, you failed the cost-benefit analysis. Now let's talk about what happens when you're the one trying to leave, because this is where you really see the dark side come out. Capricorns don't handle rejection well, not because their ego is bruised, but because they don't fail. Failure isn't part of their identity. So if you're leaving, if you're rejecting them, you're creating a failure in their record. And they can't have that. So they'll do something that seems completely out of character. They'll fight for you, but not in a romantic way, in a strategic way. They'll identify what you need and suddenly start providing it. They'll make promises about change. They'll create a plan to fix the relationship. They'll be attentive and present and everything you've been begging for. And it'll feel so good. You'll think, finally, they get it. Finally, they're showing up. And you'll stay. You'll give them another chance. But here's the thing. They're not changing because they had an emotional breakthrough. They're not showing up because they realized how much they love you. They're doing damage control. They're preventing a failure. And the second you're secure again, the second you're no longer a flight risk, they'll go right back to how they were before. Because sustainable change requires vulnerability. It requires admitting you were wrong, examining your patterns, doing the uncomfortable emotional work. And Capricorns would rather die than be that exposed. They've spent their entire lives building walls, creating this image of competence and control and unshakable strength. And to do the real work of change, that would mean taking the walls down, letting you see the mess underneath, admitting they're not perfect. And that's not happening. So you'll end up in this cycle. You try to leave, they convince you to stay, things get better briefly, then they revert. You try to leave again, they fight harder, you stay, things get worse, and every time you try to walk away, it gets harder because they've made you doubt your own perception of reality. And this is where we need to talk about Capricorn's relationship with control, because this is really the core of everything dark about them in love. Capricorns are terrified of chaos, of unpredictability, of anything they can't manage or direct or influence. And emotions? Emotions are the definition of chaos. You can't control when you feel them. You can't always explain them. You can't logic your way out of them. They're messy and irrational and overwhelming. So Capricorns do what they do with everything that scares them. They try to control it. They intellectualize their feelings. They create rules and structures around relationships. They turn love into a project that they can manage. But here's the problem. Love isn't controllable. It's not a business plan. It's not a mountain you can systematically climb. It's wild and messy and requires surrender. And Capricorns cannot surrender. Surrender means vulnerability. Vulnerability means someone could hurt them. And they decided a long time ago that they'd rather be alone than hurt. So they create these relationships that look functional on the surface, but are emotionally hollow underneath. They'll be faithful, responsible partners who provide stability and security, but they'll never fully let you in. There's always a part of them that's behind glass. You can see it, but you can't touch it. And if you're someone who needs emotional intimacy, who needs to feel truly known and seen and met, you'll slowly die in a relationship with a Capricorn who refuses to do that work. You'll have everything you thought you wanted: stability, loyalty, reliability, but you won't have connection, not real connection. And you'll feel lonelier in the relationship than you ever did alone. Now, let's talk about Capricorn and manipulation, because this is something people don't associate with them. Manipulation sounds dramatic and obvious, and Capricorns are neither of those things. But they are strategic, and they do manipulate, just not in the way you'd expect. They don't manipulate through emotion or drama. They manipulate through structure and expectation. They set up systems where certain behaviors are rewarded and others are punished. And they do it so subtly, you won't even realize it's happening. For example, they'll praise you when you're being reasonable and giving them space and not demanding too much emotional availability. And they'll withdraw or get cold when you're being emotional or needy or asking for more connection. And over time, you learn. You learn to shrink your emotional needs. You learn to be more independent. You learn to not ask for too much. And they'd tell you this is healthy, that you're learning to be more secure, more self-sufficient. But really, you're learning to accommodate their emotional unavailability. You're learning to exist in a relationship without actually expecting your partner to meet your emotional needs. Or they'll use their work as a shield. They're always busy, always grinding, always working toward the next goal. And if you complain about not getting enough time or attention, you're being unsupportive of their ambitions. You're standing in the way of their success. You're being selfish. See how that works? They frame the narrative so that your legitimate needs are character flaws. And if you internalize that framing, you'll start to believe something is wrong with you for wanting more. You'll start to think you're too needy, too demanding, too much. That's manipulation. It's just the slow, steady, systematic kind instead of the explosive kind. And the really dangerous part? They often don't even realize they're doing it. They genuinely believe they're being reasonable. They genuinely think you're asking for too much because they've spent so long suppressing their own emotional needs that they've forgotten those needs are normal and human.
Let's talk about what Capricorns fear most in relationships, because understanding their fear is the only way to understand their behavior. Capricorns are terrified of being seen as weak, of failing, of not being enough. Underneath all that confidence and competence and control is a deep, gnawing anxiety that they're not actually as capable as they need to be, that they're one mistake away from everything falling apart. And relationships are risky. You can work hard and do everything right, and the other person can still leave. They can still hurt you. They can still see your flaws and decide you're not worth it. And for a Capricorn, that's unbearable, because they've built their entire identity on being worth it, on being the reliable one, the strong one, the one who doesn't need saving. So they protect themselves. They keep parts of themselves hidden. They maintain emotional distance even when they're physically intimate. They prepare for the ending even when things are good. Because if they're prepared, if they've got walls up, if they've never fully surrendered, then when you leave, it won't destroy them. Except it does destroy them. They just won't let you see it. They'll cry alone in their car on the way to work. They'll ache with loneliness while maintaining a full social calendar. They'll miss you desperately while looking completely fine to everyone else. Because showing pain is weakness, and weakness is death to a Capricorn. This is why they're so hard to love. Not because they're incapable of feeling, but because they're so committed to hiding what they feel that you never actually know where you stand. You're constantly guessing, constantly anxious, constantly wondering if they care as much as you do. And if you ask them directly, they'll say yes. They'll say of course they care. They'll point to all the practical things they do as evidence. But they won't actually show you their heart. They'll keep it locked away where it's safe from you, from everyone, even from themselves. Now let's talk about what happens when Capricorns do actually fall in love. Really, deeply, can't control it, fall in love. Because it does happen. Rarely, but it happens. And when it does, they panic. Because being truly in love means they're vulnerable. It means someone has power over them. It means they're at risk of being hurt in a way they can't prevent or manage. And that feeling is so uncomfortable, so terrifying, that their first instinct is to run. Or to sabotage it, to find reasons why it won't work, to focus on incompatibilities, to intellectually dismantle the relationship before their heart gets too invested, to convince themselves they were being irrational, caught up in hormones and infatuation, not seeing things clearly. They'd rather walk away from something real than risk the pain of it not working out. They'd rather be alone and safe than in love and vulnerable. Because vulnerability is the one thing they absolutely cannot tolerate. And if they do stay, if they push through the fear and actually commit to someone they're truly in love with, they become almost worse. Because now they have something to lose. Now the stakes are real. So they double down on control. They become more rigid, more demanding, more critical. Not because they love you less, but because they love you more than they know how to handle. They'll start testing you even more, pushing you away to see if you'll fight for them, creating problems to see how you handle conflict, setting impossible standards to see if you'll meet them. Because if you can survive all of that, if you can love them through their absolute worst, then maybe, just maybe, you won't leave when they finally let you see the broken parts they're hiding. But here's the tragic part. Most people can't survive that. Most people will eventually get tired of fighting for someone who won't fight for themselves, who won't do the emotional work, who keeps you at arm's length while demanding your full devotion. So, the relationship ends, and the Capricorn adds it to their evidence that love isn't safe, that being vulnerable leads to pain, that they were right to keep their walls up. And they go into the next relationship even more guarded, even more controlled, even more convinced that emotional distance is the only way to protect themselves. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're afraid of being abandoned, so they never fully let anyone in, so eventually everyone leaves, which confirms their belief that people leave. They can't see that their own protection mechanism is what's causing the outcome they fear most. Let's talk about Capricorns and intimacy. Not physical intimacy, though we'll get there, but emotional intimacy. True vulnerability and connection. Physical intimacy? Capricorns can do that. They might not be spontaneous or wildly passionate, but they can show up physically. It's contained. It has a beginning and end. It's something they can approach with technique and attention to detail. But emotional intimacy requires them to share what's actually happening inside. To say, I'm scared, or I feel inadequate, or I need you and that terrifies me. And those words might as well be in a foreign language for most Capricorns. They've spent so long being the strong one, the capable one, the one who has it together, that admitting they're struggling feels like complete failure. So they just don't do it. They handle their emotions alone. They process their fears in private. They carry their burdens without asking for help. And if you're in a relationship with them, you will feel this wall. You'll share your fears and insecurities, and they'll respond with advice instead of empathy, with solutions instead of understanding. They'll try to fix you instead of just holding space for your feelings. Not because they don't care, but because that's what they do with their own emotions. They fix them. They solve them. They don't sit with them or feel them or let them exist without immediately trying to make them go away. So, they treat your emotions the same way.
And you'll end up feeling so alone. You'll be in a relationship, sleeping next to someone every night, building a life together, but you'll be emotionally starving. Because intimacy isn't just about being physically close, it's about being truly seen and known. And Capricorns won't let you see or know the real them. Here's something specific that happens in relationships with Capricorns that will make you question your sanity. They remember everything. Every conversation, every promise, every detail. Their memory is frighteningly accurate. Except when it comes to emotional conversations. Suddenly, they don't remember saying something hurtful. They don't recall you telling them something was important to you. They must have misunderstood when you explained how their behavior made you feel. This isn't dementia. This is selective amnesia. They remember what they want to remember. And conveniently, they often don't remember the moments where they were emotionally hurtful or unavailable. You'll bring up something they said or did, and they'll look at you with genuine confusion. I never said that. That's not what happened. You're misremembering. And they'll say it with such conviction that you'll start doubting yourself. Did I imagine that? Am I making it up? Am I being crazy? This is gaslighting. Not the intentional, malicious kind, but gaslighting nonetheless. They're so disconnected from their own emotional impact that they genuinely don't remember doing damage. Because in their mind, they were being logical, reasonable, practical. How could that be hurtful? They don't have access to the emotional reality of the moment, so they literally can't recall it the way you do. Your memory includes the feeling of being hurt or dismissed or shut down. Their memory just includes the facts of what was said, stripped of all the emotional context. And trying to explain this to them is impossible, because they'll accuse you of being too emotional, too sensitive, too focused on feelings instead of facts. And once again, you're the problem. Your emotions are the problem, not their inability to acknowledge those emotions. Now let's talk about Capricorn and jealousy, because this is where things get really dark. Capricorns won't typically show obvious jealousy. They won't make scenes or accuse you of cheating or go through your phone. That would be beneath them. That would be admitting they're insecure. But they are jealous, deeply, intensely jealous. They just express it through control. They'll subtly isolate you from people they perceive as threats, not through overt demands or ultimatums, through scheduling conflicts, through expressing subtle disapproval, through making it harder to maintain certain friendships or connections. I don't think that friend is good for you. That person seems like they're using you. You spend a lot of time with them, don't you? Said in a concerned tone, like they're looking out for your best interests. But really, they're managing the competition. Because in a Capricorn's mind, relationships are hierarchical. They need to be number one, the priority, the most important person in your life. Not because they're needy or clingy, but because anything less than first place is failure. And if they sense they're not your top priority, they won't tell you they feel hurt or insecure. They'll just start pulling away, getting colder, creating distance, punishing you without ever explaining what you did wrong. You'll feel the shift, but won't understand it. You'll ask what's wrong, and they'll say, nothing. And you'll be left trying to figure out what invisible line you crossed, what unspoken rule you violated. This is emotional manipulation through withdrawal. They're training you to prioritize them by punishing you when you don't. And because they never clearly communicate what they need, you're just guessing, just trying to figure out what will bring them back. Now let's talk about what Capricorns are like when they've been hurt in the past, because their trauma response is particularly damaging in relationships. A Capricorn who's been betrayed or abandoned doesn't become dramatically broken. They become fortress-like. They build walls so high and thick that nobody's getting through.
And they convince themselves this is strength, this is wisdom, this is learning from their mistakes. They'll enter new relationships with a massive chip on their shoulder. You have to prove you're trustworthy. You have to earn their vulnerability. You have to demonstrate repeatedly and consistently that you're not like the person who hurt them. Except you can never prove it enough because they're not actually evaluating you. They're protecting themselves. And no amount of good behavior will make them feel safe enough to let their guard down. Because the problem isn't you. The problem is their unhealed wounds that they refuse to acknowledge or address.
They'll say things like, "I don't do emotions anymore," or "I keep things surface level now," or "I'm focusing on my career." And they'll frame it as growth, as maturity, as having their priorities straight. But really, they're just frozen. They're stuck in the moment they were hurt, trying to prevent it from ever happening again by never risking real connection. And anyone who tries to love them will hit that wall over and over until they give up. The really sad part is that Capricorns are capable of profound loyalty and commitment. When they love someone, when they truly let someone in, they're all in. They'll build empires for you. They'll move mountains. They'll be the most solid, dependable presence in your life. But getting to that point requires them to do the one thing they're most resistant to doing: feeling their feelings, confronting their wounds, being vulnerable and messy and imperfect. And most Capricorns would rather die alone than do that work. So, here's what you need to know if you're in love with a Capricorn, or if you're a Capricorn trying to understand why your relationships keep failing. The darkness in Capricorn isn't about being intentionally cruel or manipulative. It's about being so terrified of vulnerability that they destroy connection in the name of self-protection. It's about valuing control over intimacy. It's about needing to be perfect more than they need to be loved. And you cannot love them out of this pattern. You cannot be patient enough, supportive enough, understanding enough to make them feel safe. Because the danger isn't you. The danger is inside them. It's their own capacity to feel pain. And they're running from themselves, not from you. If you're with a Capricorn who refuses to do emotional work, who won't go to therapy, who dismisses your needs as too much, you have two choices. Accept that this is as deep as it's ever going to get, or leave. And I know that sounds harsh, but staying in a relationship hoping someone will change is just slow-motion heartbreak. You'll keep giving more, trying harder, making yourself smaller, and they'll stay exactly the same. Because they're comfortable. The dynamic works for them. Why would they change? And if you're a Capricorn watching this, feeling attacked or defensive, that's the reaction I'd expect. Because this entire video has been poking at the thing you work hardest to hide. Your fear, your vulnerability, your desperate need to be enough, while being terrified you're not. But here's what I want you to hear. Your worth isn't tied to being perfect. Your value doesn't come from never needing anyone. Your strength isn't measured by how well you hide your pain. Real strength is letting someone see you fall apart and trusting they won't leave. Real power is saying, "I'm scared, and I need help, and I don't have it all figured out." Real connection requires you to show the messy, broken, imperfect parts you've spent your whole life trying to fix or hide. And yes, that's terrifying. Yes, you might get hurt. Yes, someone might see the real you and decide it's not enough. But that's the risk of being human. That's the cost of real love. And the alternative, staying locked in your tower of control and competence while everyone who tries to love you eventually gives up, that's worse. Because you'll succeed at everything. You'll build the career, achieve the goals, create the life you wanted. And you'll do it all alone. Not because nobody wanted to be with you, but because you wouldn't let them in. So the question isn't whether Capricorns can be good partners. They can be extraordinary partners. The question is whether they're willing to do the uncomfortable, humbling, terrifying work of actual emotional vulnerability. And most won't.
They'll keep choosing control over connection, safety over surrender, walls over intimacy. And they'll wonder why they keep ending up alone, never quite understanding that the fortress they built to protect themselves is also the prison keeping them trapped. That's the real dark side of Capricorn in love. Not that they're cold or calculating or cruel, but that they're so committed to never being hurt that they never actually let themselves be loved. And that's the saddest part of all.